Yeah, could you give us a Dragonborn sort of shout real quick?
Fusroka.
Very good. That's the dragon tongue. You just shout at me off the cliff, you know? So, I want to fall all the way down the bottom. We've all done it. Okay, if you ever played Skyrim, you know that you've shouted some peasant off the cliff. Don't pretend like you're guilt-free on this one, okay? We've all fusfakad somebody right off the cliff.
Hello and welcome back to this conversation on video games and evangelization. I'm Bobby Angel with the Word on Fire Institute, and today we've got Father Blake Britton with me as always, friend, priest of the Diocese of Orlando, a Word on Fire contributor, and a video game enthusiast. Father Blake, how you doing?
Doing very well, thank you, and just so happy to be on this show. And we have a very special episode in store for you all. As you know, this YouTube mini-series has been focusing on video games and evangelization, and we've had the privilege of having multiple experts from the field discuss video game culture. We've gone through the soundtracks, we've gone through the design, and they've all sort of shared how their Catholic faith has influenced their understanding and their own gaming experience within the industry of video games. And we were sort of praying and thinking about it, and we wondered how awesome would it be if we were actually to get, we talk a lot about Gen Z and sort of the importance of Gen Z in gaming, if we were to actually get a Gen Z onto the show to share with us firsthand what it's like to be a gamer and sort of what his own thoughts, his own desires are for the church and what the church can learn from the video game industry to evangelize to his generation. And so we have joining us today Mr. Hayden Dean. He is 15 years old. He has attended Catholic school for 12 years. He was at St. Mary Catholic Church and School, where I was actually assigned as a parochial vicar right after my ordination. He's National Junior Honor Society. He served as the vice president for that. He's also now a freshman at Melbourne Central Catholic High School. Truly loves his faith. He's an outstanding and well-accomplished scholar, athlete, and also an avid gamer. Hayden, welcome to the show. It's great to have you with us.
Thanks for having me here.
Yeah. And you know, there's one more accolade that you have that you should be very proud of that I was not able to mention here. What is that?
Well, you happen to be my godfather, of course.
Yes. So you're my godson, and I'm so proud of that. And
wow.
Wow. I'm gonna use that totally to my advantage. No, but you know, again, we were praying through and just wondering what could we do to find a person from Gen Z who loves their faith, who is accomplished, who has gifts and talents, but also who's gamer, and who has allowed gaming to really touch their hearts and has, through gaming, come to actually encounter the Lord and understand more about themselves. So again, Hayden, thanks for taking the time. It's wonderful to be with you, always a blessing. And let's go ahead and get started on this conversation. Now, we've had a ice-breaking question for every guest so far, and we're going to start you off with that. So what is the first video game you ever played? And why don't you go ahead and share with us maybe a little bit about your own history of gaming after that?
So the first game I ever played was actually Skyrim on the Xbox 360, and it was a very good experience for me. I loved it. I played it for a long time at my grandparents' house, and it was just such a fun game. After that, I played a little bit of Minecraft and went towards PC gaming a little bit, but still mostly on the Xbox. I eventually got an Xbox One, played Fortnite for a long time, but definitely one of my favorite games ever. As well as Skyrim. After that, to this point, I've still played a little bit of Fortnite, but now I'm starting to move towards Ark Survival Evolved, which some people may know. It's a very fun game. I enjoy it very much.
Yeah, so it's fascinating to me because as we talk about first game ever played,
I feel so old.
you were making us feel old. So we have had the whole spectrum on this show so far. Dr. Castronova was one of our guests, and his first video game ever was Pong. Okay,
the first
ever made, and now we come to you. Who? What year were you born, Hayden?
2005.
2005, and so your first video game was Skyrim, which I played in my 20s the first time.
Back in my day, we had 16 bits.
You wouldn't know anything about it, you whippersnapper, okay? So just, again, it's so incredible to see how gaming has been really transgenerational. I mean, we've gone from someone who played video games in the 70s and 80s, and now even as an older man and as a professor at university, he's continued. And then we have you who are removed by decades, but yet you're united by this common thread, which is video game culture. And you mentioned how video games have always sort of been part of your life growing up. And you and I talk frequently about Gen Z and its connection to video games, how it's like so much part of the culture. Can you maybe share with us, just as a Gen Z yourself, what are some of the things that really draw you to gaming? You know, as a young man, we'll eventually get into the Catholic aspect of it here in a minute, but just as Gen Z, what really gravitates you towards the video game industry? What do you find that really touches your heart amidst that industry and those different consoles?
Well, it's got to be the brotherhood. I think that's the most important thing about it. Playing with your friends. I mean, there's single player games, of course, but playing with your friends is so much like better than playing alone. Most of the time, anyways. I had a great time on Fortnite. I mean, I had a lot of friends playing on there, and we go to school and talk about it for the entire day. And it was just so much fun, to come home and play on there for a couple hours and go play basketball or football. And it was so much fun. I haven't played as much recently because some of them have gotten off of it. But it's such a great time.
Yeah, we've mentioned that sense of community. We had Jonathan Blevins on the show, and he was talking about the importance of community in gaming. And I know that, especially for young people, that's a huge part of their life, right? Like you mentioned how you've gamed with your friends online, and then you connect with them later on in person, and you continue talking about the game. So can you elaborate a little bit more on that, of how important that aspect of community is to like young people such as yourself?
Well, I mean, of course, no one wants to be lonely, right? So, I mean, being on there with your friends really builds a bond between each other. And, it doesn't make you feel like you're alone, especially when you're at your home and, maybe it's raining outside, you've had a bad day. And, you get to go hop on there and you have a good time with your friends and laugh and talk and play. And you can do that for a couple hours. I mean, every single day if you really need to. And it's just, it's really important to someone because some people go through a lot and sometimes you just need a break from reality sometimes.
Beauty's been a major theme throughout this whole YouTube mini-series, and we've spoken about the way that first and foremost, it's the ethos of Word on Fire. It's one of those things that we prioritize as leading with beauty because it really speaks to the world, it tugs at the human heart, but also how the video game industry has capitalized on beauty in such an amazing way. So first, on a practical level, for you, what are some ways that you've experienced or seen beauty in video games? Just give us a few examples. I'm sure Skyrim is going to be in there, but any other examples that you could say that, wow, whether it's the soundtrack or this scene or this story, that beauty really spoke to you and to your heart?
So yes, I'm going to go out for Skyrim first. The landscape of that world is absolutely beautiful. Those creators are geniuses. I mean, that's all I have to say. I mean, they're absolutely geniuses. And I love the world they made, how expansive it was, and so many things you could do in it. It's just like random touches that didn't really need to be there, but just made it so much better in so many different ways. And it also has a very good soundtrack. But I actually really like the Minecraft soundtrack, which I'm not sure if you guys have ever heard it, but there's so many different sounds in Minecraft, mostly like nostalgic, kind of sad sounds, but they're just so beautiful and so relaxing. And definitely one of the best soundtracks I think I've heard ever, as well as the Journey OST. This is definitely another really good soundtrack I love to hear.
Yeah, Journey's one of my favorites as well. Austin Winfrey, we spoke about him with Sean, and he's just an amazing composer who could really tap into the emotive aspect of your person. And do you ever listen to like soundtracks, in the background or something when you're studying, when you're working, or maybe if you just go through maybe a mood swing or you're just going through a rough time, or do you ever sort of turn to soundtracks or things from video games to bring you comfort?
Yes, I actually do really enjoy the Journey OST while I am studying, as well as some kind of Minecraft nostalgic things. When I'm thinking about old times on Fortnite and the Xbox 360, I like to listen to some Minecraft sounds. And also Skyrim when I'm feeling angry.
Yeah, could you give us a Dragonborn sort of shout real quick?
Fusroka!
Very good. That's the dragon tongue. You just shouted me off the cliff, So, I want to fall all the way down the bottom. We've all done it. Okay, if you ever played Skyrim, you know that you've shouted some peasant off the cliff. Don't pretend like you're guilt-free on this one, okay? We've all fusfakad somebody right off the cliff. So, one of the main focuses of this particular episode is the correlation between evangelization, video game industry, and Gen Z. So first, can you share with us the importance of your Catholic faith? Like, as a young Catholic man, what does your faith mean to you, and how's it sort of been built up in your heart?
Because again, one of the focus of the series has been, it's something that can be hand in hand. It's not, you're either a passionate Catholic or a gamer. It's the both and.
Right.
It's you can be both. And so how are you walking that walk as a young man?
Well, the importance of my Catholic faith is beyond measurable. It is so important to me, and it helps me throughout life so many times. I mean, right before this, we said a prayer, of course, and it's just, I try to implement it in my everyday life and just try to make it like every other second, as it has to be part of my faith. But in terms of video games, I always use my faith. If I ever get angry on Fortnite or some other game, if I ever lose a dinosaur in Ark or get mad at Fortnite because I'm not having a good day and I'm having a rough time, I can always go back to my faith and pray to God or just meditate with God. Be silent. That's one of the most important things to do with God, is just be silent and just kind of listen to what He has to say.
Yeah, beautiful. So to start closing it out, Hayden, lessons that the church can learn for evangelization. What do you think? What are some things that the church can do moving forward to sort of evangelize Gen Z using video game culture?
I think I mentioned this before, but I think they just need to be open to it. Firstly, it's just, make sure that it is a positive influence as well as sometimes a negative influence. So just make sure, parents out there, that your kid is playing the right game. And make sure kids out there watching this that you're playing the right game, because that's really important as well, to be able to look for the right game. I think what you mentioned earlier about Twitch is really important as well. I think some people who play video games, and know they're out there, and know you two play video games, can go and stream on Twitch and be a positive influence to kids out there, especially priests. I think priest streaming would be a very good thing. And I think I also mentioned this earlier, is for some own Catholic people that are deep in their faith to make some video games, because I think they'll be able to fully encapsulate the faith into a video game. And I would not mind a game about the Crusades, I'm not gonna lie.
What really happened?
Yeah, we could see what we can do about that. But it sounds like you sort of have a 3-tier plan that actually pretty practical. So you have, first of all, parents obviously being involved in their kids' gaming. I know your parents are very involved as far as your gaming and knowing what you're gaming and how you're involved in that. Number 2, the church meeting sort of the people where they're at, the platforms that are available to them. In the case you've mentioned Twitch, and there are others as well. And then finally drawing that out, into proper forms of evangelization. So, I think that's a great plan. I'm all for it. And so, Hayden, any final words that you want to say, any sort of closing thoughts that you would like to share with our audience as again, a Gen Z gamer, as a Catholic, what do you have to say?
Parents, don't be too harsh.
Good. So, let's elaborate a little bit more on that. What do you mean? That's important.
So, like I said earlier, about how kids can play bad games, make sure you don't see one thing and take one look at the game and be like, oh, that's terrible. Make sure you actually see it, and maybe they were just using alcohol for that one time. Maybe it was just a party, and it wasn't a bad party. It was a good solid party with a lot of Catholic friends, and they were just drinking a little bit. So just don't take one look at a game and automatically say it's bad. Research, look at it, and then determine whether it's a good game or not.
Yeah.
Parents have the unique ability to walk in at the worst possible moment
of
a video game or a movie, and you're like, oh, why, Lord, why, right now?
Yeah, absolutely, 100%, 100%. Well, we thank you all for joining us for this episode with Mr. Hayden Dean. Hayden, it's been awesome having you on, and again, I think it's just a unique experience for people to hear. We talk all the time about, we need to evangelize Gen Z. We need to reach out to Gen Z. Well, here you are, right here sitting in front of us, and you're able to share with us a little bit of your thoughts of why you enjoy to play video games. You went through adventure, heroism, the beauty of video games, what really draws you towards them. And that's important for us to hear. Bob keeps on saying, as the adults in the room, it's important for us to know those things so that we could properly evangelize the culture. So thank you so much for taking the time and for allowing us to speak with you.
Oh, no problem. I loved being here. It was great talking to you guys.
Father Blake, how you doing?
Doing very well. It was an amazing series, and I'm so grateful to God for it, and I'm happy now to continue moving forward.
Yeah, so I think we've just scratched the surface on this topic, but we hope to kind of wrap up the discussion points on this series here, especially the Christian response to the video game industry. Mm-hmm. Games are not going away.
Right.
So how are we going to use them well for evangelization? And I think a current example is a young man who's on the road to sainthood in the Catholic Church, Blessed Carlos Acutis. Can you tell us a little bit about his story for those who haven't heard of Blessed Carlos Acutis.
Yeah, so Blessed Carlos, a very recent saint. He just died in the early 2000s at a relatively young age. He was sickly, unfortunately. But he was an avid gamer. It's funny because he was actually a PlayStation gamer. They're talking about whether or not his PlayStation controller would be a relic.
A relic.
Could you imagine? I want that relic, But grew up in a devout Catholic family. He himself was a very devout Catholic, but also enjoyed gaming, was very talented as far as electronic design and what have you. And along with gaming, he also had a deep devotion to the Blessed Sacrament. And he ended up actually inventing a website that prioritized Eucharistic miracles and helped to evangelize about the Eucharist. So what you see in Blessed Carlos is, I think, really the quintessential millennial Gen Z example of holiness, to where someone who is very engaged in the world, especially the virtual world. I mean, he was a gamer. He grew up with gaming culture, and yet he used that also for the sake of the church. He recognized that this great love of gaming was tied to his love of Christ, and that everything in our hearts ultimately goes back to our Creator. They all are synthesized in that locus, that one place in our souls, which is where the Lord lives. The Holy Spirit dwells within us. And Carlos just recognized that in such an amazing way. And you see how he was able to be prudent. So, he wouldn't spend 8 hours a day gaming, but at the same time, he enjoyed a good thing.
Right.
As video games are a good thing, when done healthily and when the right kind of games are played, as we've discussed with our past guest. But that's something that's important for us to recognize. I think that he really, he epitomizes the ideal gamer, if you will, the ideal Catholic gamer, who is able to balance the goodness of the industry, to enjoy what it had to offer, but also correlated that to the real world.
All right, now to take it home, again, evangelization, to spread the good news. And again, video games very much will show dystopias and the world is messed up and there's villains and there's evil, and we're meant to go out and do something about it.
Right.
We're not just going to be an NPC that walks in circles the whole time. Like, we want to be the hero.
Yeah.
We don't want to be the guy in the town that just walks in circles.
Right.
And so take that to the real world. God wants us to be saints. God wants us to be whole, to be holy, and to take the good news of Jesus Christ and his life-giving love to the world. And so video games can play an important part in that.
Yeah.
So you've even seen success already in terms of vocations through finding the common ground of video games.
Yeah, and one of my parish assignments, I was also teaching at the middle school. I taught Catholic humanities and philosophy to the 6th, 7th, and 8th grade. And I can tell you that 8th grade boys are not the most engaged in class. For those of you who have been teachers before, I know that you were a teacher.
You don't say.
As well. Yeah. And they were not engaged until the moment that I mentioned I was a gamer, and I shared with them one of my articles from Word on Fire on gaming. That lit them up, and they became so engaged in class because they were able to see that I recognized the goodness in their desire and what they were doing. And video games then became, for me, an avenue in which I entered into dialogue with these young men. And before you know it, we had so many young men who wanted to regularly meet that we had to start an after-school club. We would meet on Fridays, of just these young men to pray the Liturgy of the Hours together, to talk about vocation. We would talk about games and things like that as well, but they just wanted to be more engaged in the philosophical, intellectual tradition of the church. 8th grade boys,
Yep.
And it all started because I was open to gaming, because I myself am a gamer and I knew about the industry, and that became an avenue by which I could evangelize these young men.
And are any now pursuing
So
vocations?
now they're still young, so they're in high school now.
Okay.
Now one of these young men is actually in the seminary, as far as not from this group, but one of these other young men who were high schoolers at the time in my parish that I helped evangelize through the gaming culture, and he'll be entering the seminary later this year, which I'm very proud of and excited about. So even vocations to the priesthood have come out of this video game culture and my association with it.
Yeah, praise God. And 2, online community. So again, back in my day, you had to physically connect Xboxes to get multiple people to play together, and since the online thing has exploded,
Yeah.
you can play with people around the world.
Yeah.
And so using avenues, just as you would Facebook or Instagram, using social media sites devoted to gaming like Twitch, like Jonathan Blevins is doing, can be very powerful.
Yeah.
And that may be, again, people that will never darken the door of a church, but this is where they spend all their time. We have to go into that space. We can't just sit back and be like, oh, well, they'll come back eventually. No, we have to be brave enough to go into that space.
Oh, yeah. Just like Bishop Barron did with YouTube, 10 years ago. Well, here's the next big form of entertainment industry would be the Twitch, So I think it'd be important for us to also enter into that avenue for the sake of evangelization. And going on that point, being a priest and a gamer is a unique phenomenon, especially when you connect with people online. So the other day I was playing Onward, on my Oculus, and I had a guy from Germany, a guy from Russia, a guy from England, and I was the American.
Yeah.
It was the United Nations practically, and we're all, fighting in the Middle East at that time, was sort of the plot of the game. And we laughed about that, but it was really cool to connect literally across the world from so many different cultures, and but it was also a keen opportunity for evangelization, because one of the gamers had noticed I had not played for a long time. And they were like, why was that? I said, well, I'm Catholic, and it was Lent, and I gave up gaming for Lent. And that just began a whole conversation. They're like, whoa, like you didn't play any Oculus for those 40 days? I was like, nope, didn't touch it once, And so we, even being gamers in the public square as practicing Catholics, and just not, Bible thumping, but just living our faith, connecting with other Catholic gamers, that can have a great influence on the industry. It did on these people. One of them was Catholic, the other were pretty non-religious, and it really stoked something in their heart. They were fascinated by it, that a Catholic would practice their faith but also play games.
The inroads you can make there. Hey, wow, you're level-headed, you like games, and you're a priest,
right?
Or again, and you're a man or woman that takes your faith seriously. The questions will start to come up.
Yeah.
Like, why do you still go to Mass? Why do you believe what you believe?
Yeah.
Why do you guys X, Y, Z? And you feel those questions, and you have reason to defend the faith.
Yes.
Like you said, it's not bashing people over the head. It's bringing that joy to that forum.
And that's attractive to people when they see that you're able to be a gamer, but also that you love your Catholic faith. That is something that really draws people in and say, whoa, there's an aspect of life that you're living, which I did not know you could live at the same time as doing this. I think that's going to be one of our premier missions, not just in video game culture, but as Catholics in general right now, evangelizing millennial and Gen Z. There seems to be a false dichotomy that you cannot enjoy your life and follow Jesus Christ at the same time. And that's a lie.
Right.
It's a very dangerous lie, because on the contrary, it's only by following Jesus Christ that you live life to the fullest. It's only by following Jesus Christ that you have the most fun and enjoy life to all its capacities. And when they witness people doing that in the public square, in our case, in the gaming arena, it does speak to them. I mean, these young men and these grown men were fascinated. And they're like, well, tell me more about this whole fasting thing. And they were just blown away by this whole, by my practicing of my Catholic faith and the fact that I was a Catholic priest. And so that's something that we really need to work on as a church, I think, highlighting that fact.
Well, that's very C.S. Lewis, putting first things first.
Yes.
And then everything else comes into order. Love God, truly love God, and give your life to Him. Be not afraid. And everything else will be directly ordered in terms of love. Then I can really love surfing for what it is. I can love a good beer for what it is. I can love a video game for what it is, and it doesn't become an idol that I worship.
Right.
I can be more detached and say, this is a good created thing. It is not the end all be all. It has not become my God.
Yeah.
I can rightly order it.
And the danger in gaming is that games are so well done nowadays, and they're so beautiful and attractive that they can easily become an idol. And they're an idol because they have this goodness in them. And so it's such a close mimicry of the divine in many ways, meaning the ability to create and to make beauty, that it becomes something that's quite seducing in that sense. And so unless we have the Lord in the right place, which is the Lord in the center of our lives, gaming will quickly take that, fill that hole. And it's hard to get out of it. It's hard to get out of it. So that's something that's so vital for us to stay focused on, that you can have Christ at the center and you don't have to give this up.
Right.
As a matter of fact, if you have Christ in the center, you get more. And Pope Benedict, he says so wonderfully, Christ takes away nothing and He gives you everything.
Yep.
If you give yourself to Christ, He takes away nothing and He gives you everything. And I found that as a priest, I've been amazed that I gave my entire life to Jesus Christ. Mind, heart, body, soul. And there's not a single thing I could say that the Lord's taken from me. Nothing. I am so fulfilled and so joyful. I mean, look, for heaven's sake, he's even using my love of gaming to save souls. Never did I think that my minor addiction, I can stop whenever I want, of gaming, that would be used for the sake of saving and sanctifying souls. I mean, the Lord wastes nothing.
Right.
He wastes nothing, and he uses all things for the good, as St. Paul says. So it's just so exciting for me to see the Lord and how good he is, and I hope that this series has helped people also to recognize that, the Lord is good, and each and every one of you watching, each and every one of you listening, you have that goodness and that vocation to holiness, and this is a way that you can actualize it as well.
Yeah, amen. Yeah. So stay tuned. We hope to be doing more initiatives on video games and evangelization here at Word on Fire. I'm Bobby Angel, fellow at the Institute.
I'm Father Blake Britton, contributor to the Word on Fire Institute. God bless, and game on.